welcome back to One-on-One Shadowboxing. Today my shadowboxing partner is Tami Solonek. Tami, you are a single mother.
Yes.
And you just got a nice gift from the Gillard government for single parents.
Yeah.
They cut back the contribution for single parents. How do you feel about that?
It's really, really hard being a single parent, especially with a career. And I mean, it doesn't affect me that much because I haven't really relied on Centrelink benefits in my life too much. I work. But I mean, there's lots of other areas where I'm not supported. For example, I have to have a nanny, and because I travel so much with my work, and the only assistance I can get from the government if we registered her would be 60 cents per hour to cover her. That's it, you know. And
60 cents per hour.
60 cents per hour, and childcare costs are really ridiculously expensive. It's really hard. I've got a job, you know, and I've been in employment for a long time, and I struggle. So I've got no idea. Well, I do have an idea of how difficult it must be for women who don't have employment, don't have the situation that I'm in, and or even anyone who wants to stay at home with their children, particularly when their children are younger. You know, kids really need their mums.
This makes it almost impossible.
It's impossible. They've got to go out to work, and then, you know, try and find childcare agencies. They're only just starting to open up childcare centres that are 24 hours. You know, this idea that childcare must stop at 6 p.m. and you get charged every minute afterwards, it's really, really difficult. So I think that the government cuts to single parents is really cruel. And it's not the way that we should be operating as a society, one that values our parents and our children.
Another thing in society which we probably should not operate with, it is violence against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders.
Yes.
And inside that, probably against women.
Yeah, being an Aboriginal woman, the statistics about violence against us is really high. In fact, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women are 45 times more likely to be the victims of violence than non-Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. And yep, that's happened in my life. I grew up in domestic violence and I had a violent marriage, and it took me ages to deal with it and get out. And I'm only just starting to speak out about it because it was so emotionally damaging to go through that sort of, you know, childhood and an early marriage. And I've just started to get into the area of advocacy, and Congress are supporting me in that. And I've just been to the 57th session on the Commission of the Status of Women, which is a big UN meeting in New York. And the special theme was the prevention and elimination of all forms of violence against women. So internationally, there's lots of stuff starting to happen. One of the biggest issues is impunity. Men just get away with it time and time again, and about it being normalised, and a sense of apathy that this is something that's always happened to women, so we don't really need to worry about it so much.
So how can we change that?
Well, there's a lot of talk about changing the rhetoric so that we talk about respecting women and having respectful relationships. You know, we were in the women's liberation of the 70s, and we kind of lost that a bit, you know, so about women being valuable parts of society, but also for situations where a woman is saying that she's been the victim of violence, for the police to take it seriously. I mean, we had the really disturbing case of Andrea Pickett right here in Western Australia, where on Four Corners did a really good show on it, and I mean, she had complained to everyone, and the police just wouldn't take her seriously, and I can really relate to that. It's really difficult to get police in Western Australia to take anything that a woman, and particularly an Aboriginal woman, is saying to them, and to offer the sorts of protection that's needed. So there's a lot that needs to be done and that can be done, and there's lots of international best practice starting to develop that Australia could learn from.
On that note,
yes.
You're also a specialist in international law, and you got some practice in New York, with the UN.
Yeah, I've been to the UN 4 times, so I've been to 2 United Nations permanent forums on Indigenous issues, which is the biggest forum for Indigenous people internationally. I've been to the expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous peoples, and also CSW57. And this year I just presented in New York on behalf of Congress as an expert for MRIP, the expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous peoples, because this year the priority theme will be the access to justice for Indigenous peoples, including truth and reconciliation processes. So MRIP every year does a huge study on a particular issue, and this year they're looking at justice. So we're right up there.
Going to Geneva soon?
Yeah, that will be in Geneva. I haven't found out if we've got my funding for that one yet, but I hope to go because it's such an important issue for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here. The incarceration rates are incredibly high, you know, by worldwide standards, and we're not alone. Indigenous people across the world are incarcerated by disproportionately affected by justice systems that are really out to get, or they're all stacked against people who are vulnerable and disadvantaged, which Indigenous people are. So it's a huge issue. But yeah, we've got a big thing coming up, which is there's going to be a high-level plenary meeting of the General Assembly in September 2014 called the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. So we've just finished our Pacific preparatory meeting, and in about a month there will be a global preparatory meeting in Norway with the Sami people, who are a very strong contender in the international Indigenous peoples' rights movement. And we're all gearing up for that. So I'm part of the IPO, which is the Indigenous Peoples Organisation Network of Australia. And we form lots of different organisations coming together to have a strong voice to advocate against, well, to talk about what's happening with Indigenous people in Australia at a really high level of the United Nations. That's a really big deal that we're working towards.
So what's the aim of that work? Being independent as an Indigenous nation, or
well, there's a few aims of it. So one of them is about information and getting information out to our people. For example, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is the key instrument for Indigenous people, but a lot of people don't know what it means. So we've got an educational purpose there. A second purpose that we're looking at is building solidarity with Indigenous peoples in other nations. So the National Congress of American Indians, for example, is a huge organisation, and we're trying to form alliances with them. We're trying to form alliances with the Sami.
Successful as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Sami Parliament is huge. That's why they're holding it there in Norway, because they've got, you know, amazing representative structure with big areas of land and a lot of money. So, yeah, when we look at Indigenous people in each nation, we're an oppressed minority. But when you come globally, we're a lot of people and there's a lot of strength. So there's that building solidarity. The other thing with the United Nations is about standard setting. So, you know, the development of principles and optional protocols and conventions and declarations and treaties and all that sort of jurisprudence, we can contribute to that. There's also all the agencies of the UN. We can contribute to programs that they might do, like UNICEF or the Voluntary Fund, or lots of different areas, the World Bank, lots of different areas within the United Nations that we can have an impact on. So there's lots of really good reasons for us to work internationally.
How important is the young people in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' life? And their future, of course. Extremely important.
So the population of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people at the last census was about 500,000 people, and about 50% of that are youth, 21 and under, I think. And I wish I had the exact stats on me, but it's very, very high when you compare it to mainstream population. The largest numbers are baby boomers, but for Indigenous people it's the opposite. Our largest numbers are our youth. So
is that promising?
It is promising, but it's also a little bit scary. You know, we've got so much overcrowding in our houses and unemployment and all these other areas now. How are we going to deal with it when all these kids start leaving home and there'll be more and more people? So, you know, we need to really, the policymakers really need to be aware of this, and in all the sort of policy submissions we're making to government was always a particular section on youth, and we're always trying to encourage and engage our youth and prepare them for what's to come.
I just observed that in the National Congress you not have a youth section.
No.
With two directors.
Yes, that's true. So there's been talk about that. Our corporate structure of Congress is such that we have the 3 chambers at the moment, but there's space for 2 more chambers, and there has been advocacy for a youth chamber, but we haven't.
Good to hear.
Yeah, we haven't quite got there yet. We do have a youth lobby group, and we held a youth leadership forum last year, and we got 100 youth from around Australia to come together. So they're certainly lobbying quite strongly. One of the girls who is going to apply to be co-chair is running her campaign on the basis that she's a youth. So we've got some really strong young ones coming through, which is great.
That's great to hear. Now, tell me, NAIDOC.
NAIDOC.
Your involvement with that wonderful organisation.
Yeah, so I sit on the National NAIDOC Committee and I'm a convening member of NAIDOC Perth. And NAIDOC Perth is an incorporated association here in Perth, and we incorporated to help manage the NAIDOC Week events in Perth. NAIDOC stands for National Aboriginal and Islander Day Observance Committee. Its links can be traced back to the 1938 Day of Mourning Conference in Sydney. It's a human rights movement for Aboriginal people. And about in 1957, the day was moved to July and a national committee was formed, and that's been running since. So it's been running as a festival, you know, this NAIDOC week since 1957. It's the longest running festival for Aboriginal people, and it's moved into a celebratory festival now. It's about the positive promotion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures and communities, and I love it.
What you like the most in that? The celebration?
the
what's
celebration.
The programs, for example? So how the programs are and how this NAIDOC national body is moving around the country. This year is going to be
Perth, yeah.
Perth.
So the National NAIDOC Committee, they set the theme each year, and this year the theme is the Yirrkala Bark petitions. It's the 50th anniversary. They choose the winner of a poster competition, they choose the winners of the awards, and they choose the focus city. So each year there is a national NAIDOC ball in a different city, and this year it's in Perth, which is quite exciting. So that will be on the 12th of July at the Perth Exhibition and Convention Centre. Very sought after tickets. You have to get in on the day, so I'm not going to talk about tickets. But yeah, and then there's local events everywhere. So we in NAIDOC Perth, we're not doing a ball this year because the national one's coming, but we do, I mean, at our ball last year we had 1,000 people. We do the opening ceremony, we have about 5,000 people there. There's a big day in Ashfield that has about 7,000 people. We do Miss NAIDOC and we do the awards. We also do the survival concert. So all our events are about bringing together Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the wider community and positively celebrating our beautiful culture. You know, we have performing artists and singers and artists, and the thing I like about it is because I'm a black politician, I'm always involved in this politics stuff. NAIDOC's not about politics, it's just about positively promoting our people and our culture, you know, which is lovely. You know, it's a breath of fresh air and it's something that's inclusive for everyone.
Tammy.
Yes.
How do you see your future and what do you want to achieve as a person?
Well, I want to continue on my path of being an advocate and a campaigner for Indigenous issues and for social justice generally. I have a real interest in social justice, but I'm also an environmentalist, and I like the Greens. In fact, I've been an active member of the Greens for, I don't know, about 7 years now, and I stood in the state election recently just as the second seat to Lynn McLaren. So yeah, my long-term goal is to be a mainstream politician. I've got 2 more years of my term at Congress, and then I'd really like to have a good go at not this federal election. Perhaps I might get an opportunity to stand somewhere, but at the one after that, because my children will be at a better age. I'm an obsessive planner, so I've had the plan in action for a long time. I wanted to become a lawyer first. I did that, and now I've had the experience at Congress as a national representative body, and then I'd like to move into mainstream politics. But you know, that's the plan. We'll see what happens.
Tammy, thank you very much for coming in on one-on-one shadow boxing, and good luck for your advocacy work.
Thanks, Tibor.
And thank you for watching one-on-one shadow boxing. See you next week, same time, same station.